Part of the hours being increased, the rest of our budget in the general account went away, and we've just been utilizing our recreation revolving account for all our expenses. So far it's been okay. I think taking on the recreation software and ability to have our programs listed online and people be able to register and pay with a credit card online helped us immensely. So the recreation software is just shy of $3,000 annually. And so far for the fiscal year, we've brought in $23,750 in program revenue. And then in addition, we have $9,180 in gym rentals for a total of $32,930. So that's good. I just have to always keep in mind, I have to be very mindful of our expenses and what else we need to buy. And it's everything from office supplies to mulch for the playground, to, any recreation supplies, also paying for the instructors who run programs and events, who are contracted to do so. So that's all through the recreation revolving. And I think, I understand where the town is in their budget and the current constraints. I think in the future it would be lovely to get some of the line items that we had originally in the budget back into the general account for, anything from office supplies to postage to things of that nature, so that the recreation revolving can truly focus on, maintenance issues with parks, playgrounds, or gym, any programming things of that nature. But for right now, we're doing okay.
Good. Thank you. Just a quick question. So you that's fantastic. You're doing what you can do with with you being the one running everything. So you said your program revenue is about 32,000, right? What are your programs?
32, about closer to 33,000 with gym rentals. Yes.
Gym. And what are your expenses to date? So
So the expenses to date are $29,487.12. But we did have a balance in our rec revolving account, so that has helped offset some of that. But our expenses are just under our revenue, but I've been lucky. We've been able to utilize some grant funding through the Cultural Council, the Helen E. Ellis, and that's how we've been able to do the outdoor concerts and outdoor movie nights every summer. So that's been wonderful. We also have had some CPC funds allocated to help with renovating that back area. And we're continuing to work with CPC on improving our parks. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I know some people have some hands up, so I just want to thank you for, so much of the recreation department is so community based, and it's so appreciated to just see, all the Facebook posts and all just things that you bring in the community together. So, so thank you for that. So it was definitely something that the town has needed, and I think you helped fill that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Hugh, go ahead. You've got your hand up and you're on mute too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Dana deserves a great deal of credit for making it work. I remember when we created it, and the deal was that it would be self-supporting, no expense to the town, and she's managed to do that. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but on the other hand, I think it's been very successful in terms of instead of grants and other sources of funding for this and that. So a hand of applause.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions for Dana? I don't see any hands up. Well, Dana, thank you. We don't have any other questions, but again, my appreciativeness to, everything you do with all the community things, and it's fantastic. So, well deserved, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
All right. Thank you. You too. All right, continuing on with our department budgets. The next budget is the assessor budget, and I think I might have seen.
Hi, I am here.
Hi there. I thought I saw you. Hi, if you could introduce yourself, and then let's talk a little bit about your budget, Theo. Thank you.
I'm Theodora Gabriel. I'm the principal assessor. Our budget, our salary budget, it's just based on a 2% increase based on contracts and union contracts. A significant increase on expenses were postage from 1,500 to 2,000. The reason for that is not only the postage went up, as everybody, I believe everybody is aware of that. It's a revaluation year, and within a revaluation year, we are required to mail out notices of new value to out-of-town owners. So that was a $500 increase on that line item. Our next significant increase was the computer software. We have a couple of things going here. We recently have NearMap. It's a high resolution aerial imagery program that actually allows us to view all properties within the parameters of the lot, make sure that we have all the structures on our database. It allows us to view from, condition of the exterior to even measure some of the structures, pretty accurate down to, a foot. So that helps us tremendously by making sure that our database is correct. So the cleaner our database is, the better results we get, values and fair market, and equitable values. The other increase, the reason for the other increase was we have a new person property software, and for fiscal 24, because it's a revaluation year, and every 5 years we have to do a complete list of every single commercial business items. And so therefore with that also comes a new software system, and that's for the dues in between the two softwares we'll be utilizing. And another reason the increase is also at the end of the year, we'll be converting to a new upgrade in our camera system. And that will also be the additional fee to run dual systems within fiscal 24. So that's the reason for that increase. All the other line items, they remain the same.
Theo, is that the $40,000 increase? Is that what you're referring to?
No, that's the 36.
No.
It was last year was a 13,000, which is the regular software fee annual fee for our current camera system, the systems that we have in place. And the 36,375, that includes 3 separate things. The NearMap new software system that we have, that actually other departments use it as well. And the fiscal 23, we budgeted that off of from our reval article. So when Jim and I talked about, because this is something we'll be using every year, it's ongoing. They update our aerial view every 3 to 6 months, so we get a fresh, updated aerial view of every single property.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in your budget, there was something for 40,000, but it looks like it was taken out by the town administrator, but I'm thinking it was put in to the IT budget. Is that, so it's just a move?
I think it's going in as an article. I think it's going in as an article.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's for the cyclical inspection program that's in place. And also being a revaluation year, there's been more field work that's required to do.
Okay.
physical field work, in addition to utilizing the NIA map, the new imagery that we currently have.
So
Okay.
is it
Okay.
your understanding that that software is now going to be put in the form of an article at town meeting?
No, that's the article is for the cyclical inspection, which is physically measuring on site every single property.
Okay, so the $40,000 that the town administrator removed from your budget, is that item?
No, I mean, this item here,
The item that's listed, computer software, $40,000 has been eliminated from the town administrator's budget.
And that's what I'm
right, that's
saying.
gonna be,
I think it was added to the IT budget. I think it was
Oh,
just
okay.
taken out of this budget, put there is what I think. That's what I was just trying to clarify.
no, the 40,000 is an annual article that the assessors have had for a few years, an ongoing for cyclical inspections. That's a separate article that the Board of Assessors actually will be, I'll be submitting that shortly. I'm just waiting for one more signature. This line item for computer software is for the new upgrades, the new camera system, the FIFA camera system, the resolution imagery system that we have now, and the person property annual fee.
That's the
Okay.
$36,000.
Yes, yes.
Right. So
Okay.
what we're just trying to understand, because you, in your budget, you had, in your department budget, you had $40,000, and then the town administrator has changed it to 0. So we're just trying to understand what that is that's been taken out of your budget.
There was something that was never in the budget. There was, the assessors had suggested that we put that in the budget on an
Okay.
annual expense. But we, in the past, we've always had that as an article,
Okay.
completely off the expense of the assessors.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Okay. I think that clears that up.
is that
Thank
clear?
you.
The increase was the computer software from 13,300 to 36,375, and that's for those 3 things I mentioned.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay,
Yes, it
thank
does. And does anyone have any questions on that?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, good. All right. Okay, well, I think that that makes sense. And so it looks like everything else on your budget is normal increases and the regular salary increases. So so it sounds like we may ask you to come back at some point to maybe talk if you have articles, because we haven't seen the warrant yet or know what articles are going to be on there. And there might even be one relative to some property tax exemption change.
Yes.
And we don't have a lot of time to talk about that tonight, but maybe
Okay.
since we've got another couple of budgets to do, but maybe once we get past the budgets, we'd love to have you come back and talk about the warrant articles that you will have up. And then if one of those is also a property tax exemption, we can maybe talk about it at that time.
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Yeah, thank you, because there's always a lot of confusion on it. So it's helpful to have another conversation and give ourselves enough space where we can make sure everybody understands it while we're not pressed for time on the budgets tonight. So I appreciate if you could join us at some other time. And it's a
Sure.
whole lot easier, right, with being remote. So it's easier to jump on. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your coming on tonight and thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a
All
good
right. Have a
night.
good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next budget is the Board of Health in the transfer station and the animal control budget. And I see some folks here, so feel free to introduce yourself and hi Matt and talk about some of your things going on with your budgets.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. We could start with the Board of Health.
Sure.
Okay. So in the Board of Health budget, On the personnel side, we have all of our 2% increases in contractual obligations, longevity, clothing allowances, education reimbursements, sick buyback, etc. On the expense side, we didn't ask for anything. We went in level funded, and that's the way that it came back from the administrator. So the Board of Health budget was pretty straightforward. We did ask, I'm sorry, on the personnel side, we did ask for an increase in overtime, an additional $2,500. We will cut the prior year almost $5,500, and that really didn't work. So we were able to get back another $2,500 out of that.
Great. So Matt, on your Board of Health, the nurse line looks like it's decreased
Oh,
too. Right?
yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Yeah, the nursing line was decreased by about 10,000. We're starting to hopefully come out the other end of the pandemic, and things were winding down on that front a little bit. And so we stepped it down, and the administrator and I talked about it, and we, it was agreeable to step it down by 10,000.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did anybody have any other questions on the Board of Health?
I don't see any hands up. Anybody? Any questions? No. All right.
right.
Moving right along, Matt.
Okay. On the transfer station, so all the staff increased by 2%. There was some step increases in for the attendance and the one transfer station worker. And that's all on the personnel side. On the expense side, on the professional line item, which is a line item that we have that we use contractors to help us with our hauling of the containers. It was at 44,000, and we walked it back by 9,000, and we based that on the amount of runs we did last year and the amount of runs we're doing this year. So we were able to cut it back by 9,000 and still be able to, I think, meet our needs going into FY24. On the expense side, again, on gasoline and oil, we did ask for an increase because everybody's, feeling the pinch at the pump, and, we're not immune to that. So we did ask for an increase of $3,500 on gasoline and oil. And that was it. That's all for the transfer station on increases and decreases.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Matt before he, Hugh, go ahead.
I just want to ask about gas and oil. I know it's been volatile up and down, but I wondered if when you started putting the budget together, it may have been $5 a gallon, maybe it's $3 now. Have you taken that into account, or is this based on current values?
So that was based on when we entered into the budget and when we had to submit all of our paperwork. Diesels remained pretty high. I don't think it fluctuated as much as gas, but it still remains pretty high, and it seems to be going up again. It went down for quite a while, and I noticed it went up again over the past few days by a few pennies. So I don't know where it's going. I don't think anybody knows where it's going to end up.
I know you have no control over it. It's every guy's guess, but I just wondered. You answer the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone else have any questions on the transfer station? Gary, go ahead.
I think he's on
You're
mute.
on mute.
You're on mute, Gary.
I should have chimed in at the Board of Health, but so I got a question about this, and I'm sure whether or not you've read it or you're part of it or you're hearing about it in the news or whatever, about this this remediation that's going to potentially be put on by DEP, and what it could do to how it could affect the homeowners, especially in Westport, or potentially affect the town. So I would just want to know how the Board of Health or the department is, confronting this, because it could be a problem. It could be a problem. I just want your take on it because I've heard other people's take on it.
Okay, so we posted online today comments that we sent to DEP this morning on all of this. So it's if all of you or anybody listening have time, go to the Board of Health page and you can see our response to DEP on things. So there's two, I think there's two different options. There's the watershed permit option, the 20-year permit, and then there's this 5-year upgrade where everybody would have to upgrade to D-Night in 5 years, let's say. So the town, if they choose the 20-year permit option, that other option where everybody would have to upgrade their septics wouldn't really come into play. So on the 20-year permit option, I believe there's less of an impact to the Board of Health directly, because day to day we wouldn't have to be involved with that. Versus if everybody had to go upgrading their septic systems in a 5-year period, there's no way we could handle that increase in work. We don't have the staff. The plan reviews, the inspections. There's not enough installers and engineers in town to even pull that off in a 5-year period.
Right.
So that would be a huge impact that we just couldn't pull off. So there are two options. I don't know exactly which way the town is going to go. I hope they're going to pursue the 20-year permit option. It's less impactful to everybody, the departments, and especially the residents. So it kind of transfers the cost from, impacting every individual resident to kind of the town as a whole on the 20-year permit option.
Yeah, and let's face it, if it becomes law or whatever the case is, it's not going to be cheap for anybody. It's not going to be cheap for a resident. It's not going to be cheap for the town long term. So these are things I think that need to be looked at when we're developing like our capital CIPC. That this could be a big ticket item way out into the future. And we talk about schools and this and that and buildings, but this could potentially be something that we need to address long term. And I'm happy that the Board of Health is kind of on it, and I know that other communities are involved. Other communities have been very vocal with the DEP, and I'm just happy that you're posting stuff and making the residents aware of what potentially could happen. And it's just that we can't ignore this. And it's more of an educational piece right now, I think, but we don't want it to turn into this big, larger bill that the residents are going to have to front, or the town for that matter.
Well, I agree.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Gary. Hugh, you have your hand up. And you're muted, Hugh.
The 5-year deal isn't real. It's simply a threat generated by bureaucrats. Never going to happen for all the reasons that Matt mentioned, etc. We don't know what the implications of the other approach are. And what we have is a trial balloon by an appointed bureaucrat that already has generated lots of backlash. So what's going to come out after it gets studied further is anybody's guess. At this point, it's unrealistic financially for the town to take on upgrading septic systems, etc. Millions of dollars would be involved. What's going to come out of it, we'll find. Gary, you're right. This is something not to ignore, but it's not going to happen in the 5-year bit. It's something to be very careful about.
Thank you, Hugh. Tanya, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Tanya Ryden, Chair of the Board of Health. Yes, the Board of Health has been following this very closely. We've had individual meetings with DEP, gone to the public hearings, et cetera. And as Matt alluded to, we did sign off on detailed comments that were submitted to DEP today. But also, there's a lot of misinformation about the proposal out there. We did put a letter in Shorelines a couple weeks ago to kind of try and cool the temperature a little bit. Hugh is absolutely correct. The 5-year permit option is there because DEP doesn't have the legal authority to mandate a watershed permit. That's what they want towns to do, but they don't have the legal authority to do so. And so they're trying to make, the stick, use the stick to get the authority they do have. But the first step is for the Westport River watershed to be designated a nitrogen sensitive area. That's a multi-year process. It's a public process that people will have an opportunity to provide input. And if we are able to demonstrate the continued progress that we've already been making, it may not even come to pass. Who knows? So it's years down the road. DEP is under constraint to do this because of litigation. So I don't think they would have chosen this approach on their own. They're being forced to move at a fairly accelerated rate. I think their process was very flawed. Their communication was very poor. And the result is flawed as well, as we've commented on. But I also want to comment that the town has been proactive in addressing the nitrogen pollution problem already. As you know, the planning board did a targeted integrated water management plan, which will be the basis of a watershed permit. We wouldn't have to do a lot more. Other towns that don't have that in place are further behind the 8 ball. So the town is pretty well prepared to move forward with a watershed permit, a 20-year permit. But part of that would be things like sewer, continuing the local regulations we have targeting cesspool upgrades, for instance, and requiring nitrogen reducing systems in new construction. That's already all in place. So we're sort of in a relatively good position, but there will be costs down the road. One of the things, for instance, we periodically get town meeting approval to borrow from the state revolving loan fund to be able to do low interest loans to homeowners for septic upgrades. I would like to see that interest rate lower so it's less of a burden for homeowners, because regardless of what happens with the state, the homeowners have septic systems that fail all the time and need to upgrade anyways, when they sell a property or if it's bubbling out of the ground. So there are strategies that, we'd love to work together with the finance committee and others in town to try to make those even more beneficial to homeowners. And so there's lots more that can be discussed down the line. I don't want to take any more time right now, but it's certainly going to be a subject of conversation, and there are financial implications down the road, no matter what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does anyone else have any questions on this?
No, I'd just like to thank the Board of Health for being on it. It's going to take a lot of monitoring, and it sounds like it's nowhere off the radar. They're doing their due diligence to make sure that everyone's protected.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. So, Matt, I think we're ready for your third budget, right?
Yes, animal control.
Right, go for it.
All right, so with animal control, our staff was increased by 2%, and then the ACO will be eligible for sick buyback in FY24, which increased that line item. We did, however, have an open position that, after talking with the town administrator, because of the overall town budget, we agreed to eliminate that position for FY24. However, he did leave $4,000 in that professional or that part-time ACO line item, just in case we have to hire some on-call people to cover our ACO if he's out on vacation or sick, something just so we can keep going with things and keep things moving. It's kind of an important service. We get a tremendous amount of calls daily for stray dogs, lost dogs, or, you know, potentially rabid animals that we have to respond to. And to not have anybody in, it can be disastrous. On the
So Matt, can I ask you a question before you keep going?
sure.
So you have, so what, this leaves you with one person as in your office to do animal control, or what did you go from and to? Like, do you have one person or more than one?
So I think it was we had two at one point, then we went to one, and we've been trying to hire throughout the entire fiscal year, but we just couldn't attract anybody into the position. So we've had one. So that the ACO was a 30-hour-a-week employee. Now he's been 40 hours a week for nearly the entire year, fiscal year. So he's full-time and you know, pretty much getting the job done. So we went from 2 to 1, trying to hire back a second one, but now we're not going to be able to do that.
Okay. And do you feel that the one person in the position is able to meet the needs of the town? And I'm only asking, you know, I know, we all know we have budget constraints and things are being cut where needed. And I'm just curious that without having the position, the needs of what the animals are don't change. So I'm just wondering how exposed do you feel you really are with that?
I think we're really exposed. You know, he's doing a great job, and he's, you know, meeting the needs as best he can. But we do have gaps in coverage. There are times, because he doesn't work every single weekend. He's on one weekend, off the next. And, you know, I know people get frustrated when, you know, he's off or can't get through, and there's a situation that arises. We do have kind of a loose agreement with Fall River that, you know, they'll come and cover us if we have something pops up and Nick is off. But when we get back into the warmer weather, into the season, when we get a lot of people back into town, that's where it really picks up, and that's where you know, it gets a little worrisome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Tanya, you have your hand up, so do you want to say something?
I just want to reiterate that I understand the town budget constraints, but residents also need to understand if we don't have the staff, we can't provide the coverage, 24/7 coverage. It's just not feasible.
Right. No, thank you for clarifying that. That's what I wanted to make sure that, you know, that's understood, that this is definitely not filling this position would definitely impact the service that the town will see. And so again, that's the town's choice in terms of what we fund and don't fund, but I want to make sure that that's called to attention. Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just kind of following on that note, and Matt and Tanya both, thank you for providing the update on that. So, and Matt, you mentioned that we have kind of this loose agreement with Fall River as a backup, as a fallback for when our ACO is not there. What other sort of support do we get from, you know, do we have a similar thing with Dartmouth? The other question that I have in my mind is sort of like, where does the ACO stop and law enforcement pick up, or, you know, the environmental police? Could you clarify kind of, I'm sorry, these are kind of maybe dumb questions, but for me as a newbie, just trying to understand, you know, how these things all connect.
Sure. So we tried to enter into with a lot of the surrounding towns mutual aid agreements, but everybody's in the same boat as we are. They're short-staffed. They don't have a lot of people. They barely can cover their own cities and towns, and they were very reluctant just to, you know, agree to anything to be able to help us. Fall River, I tried to do a mutual aid agreement, but they didn't want to do anything formal. But they do often help us when, you know, we give them a call if Nick is off, and, you know, they can pick up, let's say, a dog and bring it to the shelter for us. it's kind of so the PD will get emergency calls a lot when Nick is off or somebody has some animal emergency, and it's frustrating because they don't really have the I don't think they really have the people or the resources to bring a stray or a lost dog to the shelter. They kind of rely on the ACO to do that, but they do help us when they can. And as far as environmental police, they generally only get involved if there's animals on the beach or on Route 6 or a state road. They don't get involved too much with us for town type issues.
Thank you. And can I just on that note, I know like I've heard a lot of talk within the town, particularly on social media, concerning problems on Gooseberry Island, and I'm assuming that would fall under the environmental police jurisdiction then, would it, rather than the town?
Yeah, anything on Gooseberry Island is generally environmental police. We do go and assist, especially if it's like some kind of dog related issue or something like that. But we'll respond to because of the bird flu. We'll go out there and respond to if somebody calls in, they see a dead bird or something out of the ordinary. We do go out and assist because the environmental police, are not there all the time. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Karen, you're on mute. There you go.
I was telling you to go ahead.
That's what I figured.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that I understand I'm reading this budget correctly, because where it says department head and assistant department head, it's blank. It has the part-time person there at 31. So they're actually full-time and not part-time. I'm confused at where the salary for the full-time ACO is listed on your budget. Is it under professional?
Yes.
I'm still confused. Okay.
These budget sheets come over to us like this. It's not really laid out the way it should be, and I apologize for that, but we don't develop these. So the full-time ACO is under professional. So that would be the full-time ACO. The part-time ACO, the position that we lost was under the part-time ACO.
Okay, so the increase in salary of the full-time was because it's truly full-time now?
Right. The increase reflects 30 to 40 hours plus a 2% increase.
Okay, all right, good. I just want to make sure I was reading this correctly. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so moving down to the expense portion of the animal control budget, gasoline and oil again. However, we got a decrease on that one. I don't know how that one's going to work. I guess we'll see as the year goes on. So we asked for 2,500. We ended up with 1,500. We actually lost 500 from our current budget. And then on the animal care, this line item is, primarily for when we bring animals to the shelter, we have to pay. So when animals brought to the shelter, there are things that we have to pay for that we get billed for, and the shelters all went up on their pricing. And my increased request was just a reflection of the price increases that we are going to see, or we are seeing. So again, we didn't get that. Well, we'll just have to see how it goes as the year goes on.
Hugh, go ahead. You're muted, Hugh.
Just wondering, Matt, you pick up various dogs. How many of them are lost dogs that are returned to their owners? And if that's the case, presumably the owners get charged for the kennel fees, etc. But how much are just plain, feral dogs or things that don't have a home? And how does that all work out?
So you're correct. If it's a dog that's lost and then the owner reclaims it, the owner would pay the fee. The town pays the bill, and then we pick up the check from the shelter, and then we deposit it and get reimbursed that way. Lost dogs or stray dogs, we are responsible 100% for the bill, and we get no reimbursement on that. I don't, I apologize. I don't have the breakdown to how many dogs are reclaimed versus not claimed right now at the moment.
I'm just curious. I mean, back of the envelope, half of them, a third. I'm not going to hold you to it. Don't worry.
I would say that 70% are reclaimed. So it's it goes beyond just that. We often have to have animals cremated. Like if we pick up a sick or injured animal, it gets cremated. There's a fee for that. If it's a potentially rabid animal and the police come out and have to dispatch it, we have to have it prepped to go for testing, and that there's a fee to that. So there's a lot of little fees that accumulate.
Yeah, I'm just interested in if there was any kind of recovery. And it sounds like there's a significant amount, which is good to hear. And you have to do what you have to do. I understand.
Gary, go ahead.
So, Matt, on the when they're patrolling for animals that have deceased, none of this is on state highways, right? State Highway 177. We're not. The town is not also taking care of those roads.
That's correct. We do not.
Okay.
No, we do not. We only take care of town roads, town property, that type of thing. Nothing state.
Okay.
Keep going, Matt. Looks like no other questions at the
No,
moment.
I think that's it. I mean,
That's it.
that's it for the three budgets. We were pretty straightforward this year. We didn't really ask for hardly any increases, and that's pretty good. I did send over just a revenue comparison to for FY 21, 22, and 23 from and it shows a snapshot of July 1st to December 31st for the three departments. And I could put it up on the screen, or if I don't know if you guys have seen that, but
if you want to put it up on, I did see it, but if you have the ability to pop it up on the screen, that'd be fantastic, Matt.
Okay, let me try this here.
We may have to give you, I don't know if we have to give you rights to share.
Find out.
Nope, it looks like you should have rights. It says everyone can share their screen.
Okay. Just trying to let me just bring it up. Can you guys see that?
We got it.
Okay. So FY 21, 22, 23, blue being Board of Health, orange transfer station, gray animal control. You can see they're all pretty close. So we're all of our revenues are tracking, within a couple $1,000s of each other throughout the 3 fiscal years. So we're not seeing any serious decline in revenue, according to the numbers that I'm looking at and the reports that I'm running for the 3 departments. Animal control really never had any revenue, so it's definitely been picking up in revenue. We've been out patrolling, been a little bit more active in making sure that all the dogs are licensed and vaccinated. So I think the increase in revenue on the animal control side is reflective of that.
Gary, go ahead.
So, Matt, when was the last time, and I guess that we probably, I don't know if some of these fees are state regulated, mandated by the town or what have you, but we did an analysis of what the town charges for, not only on the Board of Health side, but also at the transfer station. I know that you also do, if the bags need to be increased or whatever the case may be. Was that done last year, if I'm not mistaken?
So this fiscal year, we increased on our bulk items, and we increased on the punch cards, I believe, at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay,
So yes, that was all done within the fiscal year.
okay. Now, on the Board of Health side, how much are you really generating for revenue there? It's really probably minimal.
It's not minimal. Not minimal at all. I want to say that the final numbers that we, the revenue that we brought in at the end of last fiscal year was somewhere around 240,000. Which, just if you looking back at what we used to bring in, it was significant.
Oh, right. So from year to year in the Board of Health, the increase has been significant.
Yes.
But has the Board of Health fees been increased? When was the last time the Board of Health fees have been increased? I guess that's the question.
2019.
2019. Okay. And that would include stuff like septic and everything else.
Right. When I came on board, we completely overhauled the fee schedule. I mean, it was like a single page with a few things on it, and now it's 2 or 3 pages long, the way it should be. And everything was broken out, and the fees were, we did a fee study across the region and came up with, the fees that were appropriate. And that was done. I said 2019. I meant fiscal 19.
Yeah. As we meet with department to departments, I think that, as departments see that they're struggling with help and struggling with manpower, we kind of have to look at these fee structures a little bit more in detail. And why I say that is, if in fact we need more manpower in these departments, then we need to raise fees. I mean, nobody wants to raise fees on anything, but in order to support the department, other than having overrides, the second component of this is we need to raise fees. And we can go down the list. We met with the building department, now we're meeting with Board of Health. And like I said, no one wants to do it, but, in reality, it may have to be done. That's only my take on it. I mean, nobody wants to charge people any more than we have to, but if people are requiring or expecting services in town, absent an override, that is really the only other alternative.
Yeah, and just to reiterate too, Gary, I mean, even if the Board of Health were to increase its fees, those are general fund revenues, so it doesn't necessarily equate back to the Board of Health necessarily being able to add staff. So it's general revenues, but it supports the town, which supports everything. So I think that's an important distinction, because there are departments that do not generate revenue.
Yeah.
They don't, just because they are not a department that generates revenue doesn't mean that they deserve to not have staff when other departments do. So I think we just need to be careful when we talk about department revenues and prioritizing that. So, there's plenty of departments that are pure admin, will never generate.
Right, yeah, definitely.
And have just as much of a need, so.
Yeah,
But overall, absolutely, we all should be looking at every department and every revenue, because it does go to general fund revenues, which increases the overall town's revenues that can be distributed in some fashion.
Yeah.
Cindy, did you have your hand up? Did I miss that? Or Hugh does. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hugh. I thought I saw
I
something.
just wanted to mention that we've had this discussion in the past in connection with the transfer station. And there is a balance we always figured between raising money for the operation, which is fine, but you can end up discouraging people from using it, which means stuff gets dumped along the roads here, there, and elsewhere. So there is a balance between the revenue side and the utilization side, shall we say.
Thank you, Hugh.
And
Cindy, go ahead.
on that note, the transfer station right now is just about break even. I mean, they're pretty darn close with the recent increase, given what they've collected in the 6 months. You double that, and it pretty much covers the transfer station budget overall, which I don't think you could ask for much more than than that. And I agree with you. I mean, you raise it, people will just start dumping it at the gate or on the side of the road or wherever.
Thanks, Cindy. Tanya?
Just two comments. One, circling back to the transfer station, Matt didn't mention this, but we get revenue for recyclables, and that revenue has really plummeted as that market has changed. That's not something we don't have any control over. So revenues will fluctuate that we can't, recover. The board did also agree, we're staggering the increases. We increased, as Matt mentioned, the punch card fees, and I think the proposal is for this next fiscal year to increase the annual sticker fee. So we are being very sort of deliberate without, trying to balance the need for, as much revenue as possible without causing sticker shock, so to speak, and trying to keep that balance. So that was the first comment. The second comment is the current Board of Health members have been pretty proactive around seeking grants to help support various aspects of the operation. Like we got a grant a few years ago to help offset the costs, the fees associated with reporting for D-Night systems. And we currently have a grant from DPH for it's called a Public Health Excellence Grant that will help us because we're supposed to meet the statutory requirements of all the inspections and reporting that public health departments have to do. And almost no department can meet those, at least the smaller cities and towns. So this is meant to help us do that. And it's a collaboration with 6 other communities, but it's a lot of work. Grant management and being able to implement grants are a lot of work. So it's a labor of love, a lot of volunteer hours from board members, and a lot of extra work on Matt. So I just want people to be aware of that. He's got very broad shoulders, but they're being weighed down.
Well, thank you for that. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Nope.
Looks like no. Well, I appreciate you both for coming in tonight, and thank you for a very well done presentation and discussion, and it's very appreciated. So thank you very much. The town is lucky to have so many people in the departments and in volunteer board that are so dedicated and so articulate. So hats off to both of you. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
appreciate your time as well.
Great, thanks. Have a good night. Thank you. Okay, so continuing on, I do not believe we had scheduled tonight to have police come in and the highway department, but I believe neither are here tonight or were able to come. So Gary, I think you're the highway department liaison. Do you know when we'll be able to get them scheduled to come in? Because
Next week.
Next week, okay. Because we're down
If it's too much.
What's that?
If it's too much for next week.
No, next week is actually
Okay.
So let me just go over. So what we have left is we have scheduled for next Tuesday, the 31st. We have IT, the planning board, and then our finance committee and reserve funds. So we certainly have an opportunity to have the highway come in. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hugh.
I was under the impression the police would be rescheduled next week. Maybe I missed that. If you don't have it, then obviously the left hand doesn't know what the right is doing. So I will check and see what I find out.
Okay. The chief had initially scheduled for the 24th. And then when we sent out this meeting invite, he declined the invite. So we knew that he wasn't able to attend. But we just don't know when he is going to attend. So if he could do the next week, the 31st as well, that'd be fantastic.
I don't know that, but I think I saw somewhere that it wasn't on tonight.
Okay.
I assumed it was next week, but I'm gonna need to check that, just an assumption.
Okay. If you could, that'd be great. So, so we have to reschedule police and then highway. And then, again, we have scheduled for next week, IT and the planning board. And then on February 7th, we have the school to come in. So, ideally, it would be great to leave the February 7th just for the school to give, sufficient time for that presentation. But if something lapses and we can't get things scheduled for next week, then we will have to have it on February 7th. But I think it'd be best for everybody to leave the February 7th just for the school, if we can. Okay, so I think that's it for budgets tonight. The next item on the agenda was the fiscal 24 town budget and override discussion. I don't think there's anything new at this point to discuss there. I haven't seen any different version of the budget from the town administrator, so I think we're in the same, same holding pattern there. The next, does anyone have anything they wanted to talk about on those topics? Nope, good, okay. All right, so the next item was
Karen.
Oh, go ahead.
Have we seen the, what, the first commitment for motor vehicle is? Have we seen, I know that's out. I'm just curious to see if there's a difference in what was budgeted and what, Jim has in the budget compared to what we're projecting. So I don't know if maybe we can ask Sue, or maybe I can email Sue.
Yeah, or Sue or Nicole. I don't know. And I don't think Sue or Nicole are here tonight, so we can't get any of questions answered there. So, yeah.
So maybe I'll reach out to them and ask them, we can maybe get an idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great, Gary, if you could. Great. So no other, okay, so we can move on to the third item, which was committee updates and liaisons. I realized when we left our meeting last week, Lawrence, that you were going to join the infrastructure committee. I think we need you to send a formal email to the town administrator to request, because then you have to go on the select board's agenda and they can appoint you, and then you can be official.
Yeah, I was actually, I was just looking back through some of my notes and realized.
Right, I forgot about that. So,
yeah.
And then, but even in the interim, Steve Olet is the chair of the committee, so you can find out when they're meeting. You can at least start to go to meetings. You can't vote until you're appointed officially, but at least you can kind of catch up. So,
Gotcha.
I just want to alert you to that if you didn't know that, or we didn't talk about that. So,
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other liaison? Cindy, go ahead.
Excuse me. There's a meeting the long-term building committee tomorrow. I'm only going to be able to attend briefly, but I believe that the purpose of the meeting tomorrow is to look at the language that the chairman, Brian Valcourt, has suggested be put to the voters to get a feedback from the voters regarding the use of the old high school, so that there would be some town feedback. I have no idea what it's going to look like, or what how the question will be phrased. I don't know I don't think it's going to be on the ballot, but I could be wrong. So that's one of the things that'll be discussed, I think, tomorrow. But I'll only be there for a short while. I have a personnel board meeting at 6:30.
Great. Thank you for that. Hugh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm sort of appalled to hear that, because I can't think of anything less productive than to ask a vague question to the town to be answered on a complicated matter. whatever answer you get will be spun by somebody who wants whatever result to come out, and it's just going to complicate matters without helping at all. Not your fault, Cindy, but I hope you can point that out to people involved, that this is a complete and utter waste of time and probably negative more than that.
I think it's certainly going to open up a lot of questions and whatnot, but we'll see. I understand the desire by the Board of Selectmen to get feedback on the use of that building, because if they decide to sell it without some additional input, once it's gone, it's gone. And if people have productive alternatives and whatnot, I think they just would like to hear them.
But so far, nothing involving that has involved any discussion what it would cost, other than some comments saying 25 to 30 million.
Right.
You know the old saw that says a district attorney can indict a ham sandwich.
Right.
The same way, you can phrase a poll to get any result that you want, and I think it's counterproductive rather than useful.
Yeah.
I don't have control of it. I hope you can make that point, though.
Thank you, Hugh. Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Cindy was saying. Cindy and I are both actually on that committee. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to attend after all tomorrow night because of family commitments that conflict with that. But Cindy, I will certainly make my best effort to get some thoughts over to the group before that meeting, because Hugh, I totally hear what you're saying and pretty much echoed your sentiments at the last meeting we had, which was, the preparation for this one. I definitely have some ideas as to how we can make that productive. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. How you phrase the question totally defines the answer that you get.
Right.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Lawrence. Gary?
Yeah, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here. You was already mentioned this, but no, the whole point of this committee when it was set up was to do just that, explore alternatives and options that the town would see viable for this piece of property. Why we need to go to the voters, which is not a bad thing, but why we need to now add another layer to confusion. And this early on in the game, if we have a committee that's together and they're not making a recommendation, how will we go to the voters and expect the voters to make a recommendation? When
Well,
we set a committee that, and this is nothing against the people that are on the committee,
Right,
but I
right.
thought that was their charge.
Well, the committee, in fact, has voted to keep the building. But they certainly don't have the ability to put together any plan or, they know what an estimate of the cost would be. And so, there's a whole ocean in between as far as what, could a portion of the building be done? There's a lot of other things with a ragtag committee of people that meet, an hour here and there. We would have to get pretty serious about what it is that the committee is charged to do. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect as to how far that committee can actually go with, what the future lies. No matter what is done to the building, it's going to cost the town money. And so that's always the problem, that no matter what we do with that building, short of just keeping it for another $200,000 for next year, that if you sell it, you're going to have to come up with new administrative offices and new ball fields. So that's going to cost the town money. If you demolish it, it's going to cost the town money to demolish it. Everywhere you turn, it costs a significant amount of money, whether it's a few $1 million or $30 million. So it's that broad expanse in between that I don't think the committee feels fully charged to come up with a definitive plan. So maybe that's not true, and maybe they need to go back to the board. We'll have a new chairman. Brian Valcourt is not going to run for office again. So maybe with a new member from the Board of Selectmen on board, maybe we'll get a little bit clearer view as to what the scope is of that committee. Because it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and I think that without that charge,
Yeah.
defined charge, like now going to add another layer on to the voters. That, I mean, if I was voting on it, I wouldn't know. I'd be relying on the town to tell me what the best, use for that property is. And if you could talk to some today, and then tomorrow they've changed their mind. We all have different opinions on this property. So, we know that town-owned property is very scarce. We need to potentially look for that. But is the use of this parcel as it stands going to be developed and be used for additional resources for the town, or be used for tax revenue? I mean, that's really what it is. Do we want to generate revenue, or do we want to generate more expense? It's
Right.
that simple.
right,
And in my opinion, the way the budgets look now, I think we need all the revenue that we can get. And these are things that we need to look at long term. I don't want us to be in a hole that we can't get out of, with all this debt and everything else. So I think
Well,
the revenue
I
is
don't
something we
think-
discuss.
I don't think anybody believes that you could get $10 million for that property. So that's problem number one, is that this
Right.
number was floated out there, and there's no way that anyone's going to pay $10 million for that building. I mean, even for house lots, the maximum number of house lots you could put on there is 16. So if somebody has to knock down the building, clear out the lot, and grade it, and you're only going to get 16 lots, they're not going to pay a hell of a lot of money for it to begin with. So there are all of these issues that keep piling up that say, okay, well, we've invested tens of millions of dollars in that property. Are we going to just give it away? I mean, is it going to literally go for nothing, and we still have to now build a new administration building and build some new ball fields? So we're going to be out $10 million anyway. So it's all of you open one door and it creates a whole nother set of problems. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
I appreciate what the committee's going through, and it seems like you guys in the committee need a clearer charge of what
Yeah.
we need to focus on. Yeah.
Well, and just to and I know Lawrence, I don't want to jump in on you, I'm sorry, but Cindy, I had tuned into a select board meeting 2 weeks ago when you talked a little bit about the long-term building, and you came
Yeah.
to the mic, and you were very eloquent in your 2 minute that you just spoke. It sounds to me like somebody needs to put exactly what you said at the mic, put that on paper. Option A is whatever, in no particular order, right? Option A is to keep the building, move the town offices into the building. That's going to cost X. And then with that option, then you could either sell the buildings. There's only 3 or 4 scenarios, and
right.
someone needs to put on paper, scenario 1 is X, Y, and Z, and that's going to cost this. Scenario 2 is X, Y, and Z, and that's going to cost this. Someone needs to put exactly what you said at the mic on paper. And that's what, in order for somebody to make any rational decision, needs to see each of the scenarios, what are the options, and what are the costs that relate to those. It's as simple
Yes.
as that, really. What you said at the mic in that 3 minutes is you just got to capture that, put it on on a piece of paper with an analysis really quick at an executive level, and then that's the basis of the discussion. But that's to me the next step. Somebody needs to do that. That's the key for the committee to put what you said. Go back to the tape and listen to what you said, because you were so articulate in the way you said it, and it just came out so quickly. But that's what's going to be on a piece of paper. Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to flog a dead horse here either, but and we could keep on talking about this probably the rest of the night. But yeah, I think what you, Karen, Cindy, Gary, what you guys have all just said pretty much sums it up. I think probably the committee has the wrong title, which creates confusion about what its charter actually is. I think it really ought to be just called the former high school reuse committee or something, that does exactly what it says on the tin, like that. And then, as you say, Karen, it's okay, what are the most realistic options? And let's do a cost benefit analysis summation of each of those. And then the committee should be there to do that work, go through that exercise, and then present those options to the board, and if necessary, to the voters. But as I said at our last meeting, if you can't put a question to the voters unless you can explain clearly and coherently what the question is about and what the ramifications of a yes or no to that question would be. And we all referred back to, at that time it was about a month and a half ago, the result of the Diamond decision was still pretty fresh in people's memories, right? And that was a classic example. The question on the ballot had to be phrased in the way that it was phrased for legal reasons, but it was so obtuse. Very few people actually, I think, understood what it entailed and what the ramifications of it would be. And so, you're punching in the dark. So, yeah. It's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks. All right. So,
Can
any
I have
other?
a say?
Go ahead. What's that?
Yes, I just my hand up.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
I agree with Lawrence. I'd extend it a little further though, because not only how it's going to fit together, but the implications after the fact. For instance, if there seems to be the assumption that everything has to move into a new administration building, I'm not at all sure that's demonstrated. There is the town hall. The other factor is that if you were to do that, now you instead of having one obsolete building, you have 3 or 4 obsolete buildings that would have to be maintained or something dealt with, etc. Cindy raised a question about playing fields. Remember, there's WIWA. They're very nice baseball and other fields on 177 that will be operational come next spring. So that may or may not be a problem. Yes, there are questions of involvement, who uses it, etc. I don't disagree across the board. There has to be an analysis of cost and the results. So far, the information, the original study a year or 2 ago was ridiculous because it simply dealt with physical possibilities with no function of whatever expense would be. That one's dead and gone for all practical purposes. The current committee is doing a better job, but still, we're all saying the same thing, but they don't seem to be. That is, what are the possibilities and what are they going to cost and what are the implications? And with that, then people can deal rationally with it. Into my soapbox.
Thank you. Lawrence, do you got more to add there?
Just one
Sure.
final point, I promise. Yeah, Hugh, absolutely. And the other thing that came up too was it's not as simple as the physical property or how much value is in the timber or whatever, that kind of a calculation. The other thing is the zoning and the intended use. And one of the questions, that came up was, what can we do within the existing structure to generate revenue that fits within the zoned and permitted purpose of the building, and what would require new permitting, new zoning, and all that kind of stuff. So again, it goes back to, if we repurpose the building, what's the cost of doing that, and what benefit would we derive from it? What can we do with it in its current state? What could we do with it in some sort of modified state, et cetera, et cetera. There's just so many angles on it and so many unanswered questions. So, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done.
Great, thank you. So I'll move on to the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any discussions on the minutes, or are we all set for a roll call vote?
I'll say.
Great. So I will, Gary,
Yes.
Hugh,
You weren't aye.
thank you. Buzzy?
I
Hi, Buzzy. We haven't heard from you tonight. So hello.
I know. There've been so many other people speaking so eloquently.
Well, nice to hear your voice. Cindy,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
and Karen, I thank you. We have no other items on the agenda tonight. We've already talked about